Good afternoon. It is August 11th, 2025. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This is your weather enthusiast, weather podcaster, Simcha Lefton, bringing you an extreme weather event that is currently taking place in the country Israel. We're going to add on to something we said yesterday, something even more phenomenal. Because yesterday we were speaking about the European computer model forecasts, but if you take a look at what the actual temperatures have been and the dew points, it's actually, the European computer model is actually underestimating the humidity in the air mass. Weather station after weather station is reporting very high dew points along the west coast in Israel. We're talking about dew points in the 80s, dew points in the low 80s with high temperatures. We've had places around Yericho, around Jericho, areas around there, or Tiberias, where temperatures are going into the 100s and dew points in the mid-70s. Heat indices are up at 120 degrees in some locations in Eretz Yisrael. We're talking in the Celsius, we're dealing with heat indices of 50 degrees Celsius in parts of Israel. There's currently heat warnings in effect for the entire country from coast to coast. There are no exceptions at all. What's also remarkable is that regarding a heat dome, the geographical heights just do not match what's currently occurring right now in the country. It's very impressive heat. This is actually a focus point of the world right now, and it's rare for Israel to be a focus point. We generally speak about areas along the Persian Gulf where dew points get into the 80s. Triple-digit heat combined with 80-degree dew points is relatively common along the Persian Gulf, even in India. But what's happening in Israel is something which is very intense, especially for that country. The triple-digit heat is combining with dew points in the 70s for some of the desert locations, and Yerushalayim has been seeing dew points in the 60s. It may not feel humid in the afternoon, but the dew points are low enough that it might not feel humid in Yerushalayim, despite the fact that it is humid in the afternoon. But dew points are not low enough to make it feel cooler. It doesn't feel like a dry heat in the sense that it actually will feel cooler. The temperatures at the very least will feel what it is. So, forecast highs, European computer model and other models forecasting a high of 106 for Wednesday afternoon. AccuWeather has pushed it up to 102 or 103 for Wednesday afternoon. Here's another thing. We're actually joining in the middle of the event. This heat event actually started last Friday. We're going on for many, many days of intense heat occurring in the entire country right now. So Tel Aviv, temperatures mid-90s, dew points upper 70s. We're dealing with heat indices up into the 100 and teens, at least the low 100 and teens. Whether they use the term heat index in Israel or not is not clear, especially when you get into the desert area. But heat index is the temperature at which it will feel like. These are close to the real field temperatures, especially if there should be no sun or you're in the shade and the winds are about 5.6 miles an hour. Let's convert this over to Celsius again. Afternoon high temperatures in Israel forecasted to be 41 degrees Celsius for Wednesday afternoon, according to a couple computer models. AccuWeather forecasting a high between 40 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius, or 39 degrees Celsius, according to AccuWeather, for Yerushalayim, for Jerusalem. But we've already had temperatures. There's weather stations already earlier today which hit 100 degrees in Yerushalayim. That's Jerusalem and Israel, and we have dew points right in the 60s at the time. Intense stuff. Anyone who has a fascination with this can go to windy.com and you'll see just numerous weather stations located across the country. You can look at each and every one and you'll see that there's a consistency of high humidity across the entire country. We know that dew point measurements sometimes are off, and meteorologists question it a lot because it's very difficult to have accurate dew point measurements. And a lot of times here in the Midwest along the Corn Belt, some of these farmers, the weather stations on the farms, could have dew points in Wisconsin reporting in the mid-80s, even upper 80s, and the National Weather Service questions these things. But when we're dealing with a consistency across the entire country, and we're dealing with the European computer model also forecasting high dew points, not as high as what is being reported, however. I mean, we have dew points in one area. A dew point went up to 81 degrees on the west coast in Israel, 80.9 degrees Fahrenheit, and 80.4 degrees. These are dew points which have been occurring at the same time with temperatures in the mid-90s. So this reiterates what we were saying yesterday. This is not just a forecast at this point. This is stuff which is actually occurring in the country. Intense heat and humidity. This includes Jerusalem. It includes Yerushalayim. For years and years, it's very common for people to say that, the afternoon highs generally are in the mid or upper 80s for Jerusalem, low 30s Celsius in Yerushalayim, and it's drier. You don't have the humidity like you have in Tel Aviv. And then you get these chamsim winds that come in every now and then, and temperatures could hit 100 degrees or higher. But it's a dry desert heat. Winds come in from the desert. So this time around, however, we're dealing with a humid heat. We have winds coming in from the desert and winds coming off the Mediterranean Sea at the same time. How that's happening is complicated, but we do have that. Plus, we have, as you approach the Dead Sea, we have the temperatures actually accurately reflecting the fact that there's a body of water over there. A lot of times, for some reason, it doesn't accurately reflect that. One of the most impressive things, which we pointed out last night, is this European computer model for Wednesday afternoon, which shows a thunderstorm in Jerusalem thunderstorm. Now, what the AccuWeather meteorologists are doing with that shows clouds will be moving in. It's known there won't be any precipitation. They don't get precipitation in the month of August, except it may have happened once, and when it happened, I was there, but usually there is no precipitation in the month of August. Sometimes when you go into the desert southwest here in the United States, we could have dry thunderstorms that move over the region. Whether that's going to be happening or not, I doubt it. But it is interesting that the European computer model does show that on windy.com. That's just totally interesting. And we were saying yesterday that the dew points reflect that, and perhaps because there won't be a thunderstorm, perhaps the dew points won't be in the 60s. Well, you see, dew points likely will be in the 60s because they already are in the 60s. That's for Jerusalem. Here in the Midwest, the National Weather Service officially, those that have an official reading for humid, do define a dew point of 60 or higher as officially humid. If those of us that are familiar with triple-digit heat will tell you that it doesn't actually feel humid when dew points are only in the lower 60s in the afternoon. But it doesn't feel cooler than the temperature is either. And dew points for much of the time will be going into the mid and even upper 60s in Jerusalem. We're talking about a dew point of 20 degrees Celsius, while temperatures are at 40 degrees Celsius for Jerusalem, possibly even higher than that. Temperatures approaching 120 degrees. We even have forecasts of temperatures at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius for parts of Eretz Yisrael, Israel, for midweek this week. As we pointed out yesterday, we have very intense stuff occurring over Baghdad. That area, temperatures soar into the 120s. And Death Valley, California, 120s. But what's most impressive over there is the fact that nighttime temperatures will not be dropping under 100 degrees. And on that note, you go back to Jerusalem, and that classic 30-degree difference between night and day just won't exist this week in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, as temperatures drop for overnight lows upper 70s. Daytime highs, low hundreds, even mid hundreds. I guess it's close to a third. Well, Well, it is a little bit close to a 30-degree difference between night and day. But Tel Aviv, some of those computer models show only a 12-degree difference between night and day. That's due to the really high dew point air, the humidity, which prevents the temperatures from dropping too much at night. So these are things which are occurring right now in Israel. Plenty of other stuff occurring in the world as well, but we're focused right now in that area because the heat actually seems to be most impressive over that area. When you get into the Persian Gulf, you do have dew points going higher than that. But the areas along the Persian Gulf, most locations are not seeing dew points. Well, they are seeing dew points in the 80s over there, but it's still unique. Israel does not usually get dew points this high, and to be receiving triple-digit heat combined with dew points in the 60s, even upper 60s. This is approaching Gulf Coast levels for us here in the United States. It's approaching that in Yerushalayim, which is a higher elevation, so it's not common for this to be happening. So we have impressive heat occurring in Israel, and that whole thing about, but it's only a dry heat, just doesn't seem to hold true right now. Unless there's someone there who's going to say that both the weather stations and the computer models are off, which is a possibility, especially when dealing with humidity. They both might have it wrong, but weather station after weather station, all of them are reporting high humidity in Israel, especially along the west coast and near the Dead Sea and near Tiberias, where dew points mid-70s at times with triple-digit heat. This is stuff that occurs in the Midwest Corn Belt on the most oppressive days, and things that occur in Texas like Corpus Christi. So not a common occurrence over there. And we have excessive heat warnings, or what they call an orange level. Intense heat, dangerous heat over for the entire country right now in Eretz Yisrael. That's what we have going on over there. So what we're adding on is the fact that it actually is occurring and has occurred. It's not just a forecast at this point, and actually even as of yesterday, it already was occurring. The dew points have gone up, however, over the past couple of days. That's something new. Last week, the dew points were not as high as what they are right now, and Wednesday will likely be the peak heating. The Israel Meteorological Department offers an enormous amount of information. They even have information on things that the U.S. National Weather Service doesn't have, but the forecast discussions of the U.S. National Weather Service are hard to beat anywhere, and that's just a piece of those are a masterpiece that you're just not going to find in other countries, to my knowledge. So we're limited a little bit on the information that we have of what exactly is causing it, especially when the geographical heights just don't match what they were in the beginning of the summer over there. In the beginning of the summer, we had heat waves where the geographical heights were up into the 590s for the decimeters. This one, according to the European computer model, the geographical heights are only in the low to mid 580s, but at the same time, we're still seeing extremely high temperatures in Israel. We're also going to start to hear about droughts here in the Midwest, probably within a few days or so. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a wonderful day. Stay safe.